Not in Iraq.
elsewhere in the region, and we haven't announced the full schedule yet.
On the NATO summit,
Yes.
a couple things, but I'll start with Ukraine
Okay.
NATO summit and Russia. The Russian foreign ministry, as you might expect, was not impressed with the results of this summit. They say that the gist and tone of, and I'll just read this one bit, the gist and tone of statements on the situation around Ukraine and the announced plan of NATO countries to conduct a joint drill with Ukraine on its territory before the end of the year are bound to escalate tensions, threaten the start of progress regarding a peaceful settlement in Ukraine, and contribute to the deepening of the split in Ukrainian society. Moreover, they testify to NATO's unreserved support for Kiev's neo-Nazi and extremist forces, including the right sector. Do you have would you care to comment on that criticism?
Well, I would say first that the only reason Russia was a topic of discussion at the NATO summit is because of their escalatory interventionist actions they've undertaken in Ukraine over the past months now. So the reason they are even on the agenda at the NATO summit is because of their own actions. I'd remind them of that. Second, we have made very clear that we will act in conjunction with our partners. You heard the President say today, just recently, that we are finalizing measures to deepen and broaden our sanctions against Russia's financial, energy, and defense sectors. Those are conversations that are entirely appropriate to discuss with our allies that were at the NATO conference.
So you absolutely reject any suggestion that the tensions are rising not just because of Russia's actions, but also because of NATO actions?
Absolutely, wholeheartedly reject that.
And what about this, the claim, or what they say is that what was done testifies to NATO's unreserved support for Kiev's neo-Nazi and extremist forces?
That's fairly offensive language, but we have said
Well, it's
we
not
will.
mine, it's theirs.
And I was responding to theirs, didn't say it was yours. Look, we have said that we will support Ukraine in its fight here because we, as NATO, stand for some principles. Democracy, peace, security, these are principles that Russia has ran roughshod over in the past several months as they've done armed interventions into Ukraine, not just in Crimea, but in eastern Ukraine now. So these principles are core to NATO, and that's why we have said collectively that we will all support Ukraine and will increasingly support Ukraine.
So you would reject, when you say the language is offensive, the
neo-Nazi
right,
language.
Exactly. But do you not have any concerns about that kind of behavior or thought among some in Ukraine that you're supporting?
Well, no. We are supporting the Ukrainian government that was elected in an election. And what we have seen is Ukraine, a sovereign territory, been repeatedly had Russia in an armed way intervene in it. And that is not acceptable. That directly contravenes the principles on which NATO was founded. Okay,
so they have there's no point at all, or there's no logical, you don't think that there's any logical or rational reason for the Russians to be complaining that NATO is raising tensions in Ukraine?
I absolutely do not in any way.
And then I just wanted to ask, do you have anything to add, and I doubt you do, but maybe you will, to what the President said about this ceasefire that has been agreed?
Just a little bit. Obviously, we have welcomed the news from Minsk of a ceasefire reached, one of the results of the meeting of the trilateral contact group there. Our preference has always been for them to find a mutually acceptable, peaceful resolution, by them I mean Russia and Ukraine, to the crisis that Russia has caused. But as the President did say, there needs to be follow-through now to the words. We are hopeful, but we are skeptical. We know there's still fighting happening. The ceasefire did take effect, I think, at 11 a.m. Eastern today. It looks like it's holding for the most part, but we know that there has to be a lot of follow-through here. Again, hopeful, but we'll be watching.
Okay.
Ukrainian Prime Minister Yatsenyuk has actually asked if the United States and Europe would act as guarantors to this ceasefire. Is that something that the United States would be prepared to do?
Well, this obviously is a ceasefire that has to be held between Russia and Ukraine. I don't have any analysis for whether or not that's something we might consider. We've obviously been in contact with the Ukrainians and other parties as well about it, but this is really something that they need to hold to themselves. This isn't about the United States, this is about them.
No, sure, but they're asking for help, I guess, in monitoring or making sure that it actually stands. I mean, would that be something given
I can check with our team. I don't know where we stand on that. I can check.
Mary?
Ukraine still?
Yeah,
Okay.
Ukraine. You said that, that description was offensive, neo-Nazi and so on. How would you describe or characterize the government of Ukraine? Is it liberal, lefty? Is it, conservative? How do you
It
describe
was democratically elected.
It was Democrat.
That's how I would
What about
describe
the
it.
government that was before, the 22nd of February last year? Was that a democratically elected
Well,
government?
there were some significant governing challenges that they had. I think that's why you saw the Ukrainian people themselves rise up and say they wanted a say in their future. They wanted to get rid of the rampant corruption that we saw under the previous government.
But you don't say that the current government in the Ukraine has like mainstream or left or went
I'm not
right
going
and so
to
on. Okay,
in
let me
any
just
way
get-
analyze their politics.
Okay, if I may, just to follow up on the Ukraine, do you have any figure on the number of refugees that may have fled, eastern Ukraine?
Let me see what I have on that. We've seen some UNHCR reporting suggesting that nearly 1 million people may have been displaced. Now, that's not all people leaving Ukraine, but been displaced because of the fighting, again, that Russia has actively fomented, has encouraged its separatists to undertake. So obviously, this is a large number, and that's why we think a ceasefire needs to be put into place, and eventually, hopefully, some sort of diplomatic resolution to this, because there are this huge number of people that the Russians have displaced because of their actions.
So will the United States of America support any kind of humanitarian corridors or anything if such a thing were to be adopted or what to be adopted at the United Nations at the Security Council level?
I don't have anything to preview on that for you, Saeed. Obviously, we think it's important to get an independent assessment on the ground in Russia because it's sort of impossible to know the exact numbers. So those are things we're interested in right now. Don't have anything else to preview.
And finally, this ceasefire, does it call for total cessation of hostility or things remain in place? I mean, these forces remain, I guess, in place?
I would refer you to them for the terms, but I can check and see if there are more details. Ukraine?
On Ukraine.
Ukraine?